Spirit of the living God, we turn our hearts to recognize your presence here with us now. May we dream dreams of a more just future, and may we always follow your Spirit, no matter where it takes us. Amen.
Amen.
I feel like one of those real old school preachers that are up here already sweating. So if anyone has a cloth, I would appreciate it right off the bat. I'll take the jacket off eventually. When I first saw that it was the Jacob's Ladder text, I got very excited because the mystic in me saw the ladder that connects heaven and earth as maybe a key to understanding how to access the heavenly realms. But then as I went into the story, I didn't find that it was an esoteric key that applied to all times and all people, but that Jacob's dream was the result of Jacob's life. And Jacob's life had the kind of drama, the family feuds, the deception, the chaos that you often find on a true Hollywood story, and not in the book of Genesis. But right off the bat, it was clear that in order to understand the dream, that you had to understand Jacob. And Jacob was someone who was born having to fight. Jacob was a fighter. And in the book of Genesis, we read that Jacob and his older brother Esau were literally fighting in the womb. It was so intense that their mother said that she needed the kids to be born right away because the agony was so great. But it was Esau that got out first, and it was Jacob who had to hold on to his heel when he was being born. And it was as if little baby Jacob knew that Esau, as the firstborn, would be the one with the birthright, which means that Esau would be privileged with having all of the land. And maybe little baby Jacob also knew that as the firstborn, it was going to be Esau that was going to be able to get the blessing, which means the guaranteed protection of God. So here we have Jacob, the second-born, who isn't born with the kind of privileges or the entitlements that his brother is given because of the traditions and cultures of the family. So Jacob has to continue to fight. He has to continue to scrap. So when Esau is out and they're a little bit more grown and Esau is out on a hunt, because Esau was the hunter of the two brothers. They describe Esau in the book of Genesis as having skin like animal skin. He was so hairy. So while he's out on his hunt, Jacob devises a plan in order to get Esau's birthright. When Esau comes back, he smells that Jacob, who is more the man of the house, the man of the tents, a man with a smooth skin, Jacob has made the most incredible stew. How many of you all have heard the story of Jacob and Esau? Okay, awesome. So he's made the most incredible stew. And Esau, famished from his hunt, says, I need that stew or I'm going to die. And Jacob says, well, if you sell me your birthright, you can have some of my stew. And Esau, who doesn't seem like he's quite the sharpest tool in the shed, gives up his birthright, and Jacob has won the first battle. Later on, Jacob isn't done. Jacob also wants to receive the blessing. So when his father Isaac is at the point of death, literally blind, he devises a plan that he's going to dress up like his brother Esau in order to get the blessing. So his mom helps him out. Rebecca puts him in sheepskin, and he's able to trick his father into getting the blessing from his brother. And if you were in the position of Esau, how would you all feel? I'd be upset too. I'd be upset too. Because it's hard when you're in moments when you see people getting ahead, and you kind of feel like you're being left behind. Yeah, and you could say he's stealing from his brother. But it's something that I think we recognize in our everyday life. The story brings me back to a moment when I was in college. And it was the end of the senior spring. And it was the moment when the people on campus would start to go for their job interviews. So just as Jacob had to change clothes in order for him to get what he wanted, at Davidson College, all of a sudden, the frat boys that had the dirty white hats and the lacrosse shorts, they did the costume change of the century. And everyone was in full suits, getting ready to get the job that they needed in order to get ahead. But these moments where we have to pass for people that we may not be, it's not all about people with privilege getting more access to more power. On the flip side, there are people who can't fully express themselves. They can't dress the way that they feel led to dress because it could be a matter of life and death. Ask Trayvon Martin's mother the cost of wearing a hoodie. Ask our trans brothers and sisters if they feel free to fully express who they are without there being a threat on their life. Ask our Muslim sisters, the students who have been kicked out of school for just wearing a hijab. So these having to pass is something that is not limited to just the book of Genesis. It's still going on today. And having to compromise in order to get your share in life is also still happening today. And sometimes you just get really tired playing the game. Like me this morning, I felt like I needed to put on my new blazer that I invested $50 at H&M because I was preaching today. I needed to get that blazer on, and I've been sweating so hard up there. I'm going to take this thing off right now. Because sometimes you have to exit yourself. You have to exit yourself from the game momentarily. And those are the times when the Spirit can actually come in, because you're not just going into the same rules and regulations that you've been playing before. And that's where we meet Jacob. Esau has been so mad that Jacob has won the birthright, has won the blessing, that he's literally driven Jacob out of the homeland. And Jacob is on the run. So when he has this dream, he's literally having cold ground as his bed and a rock as his pillow. That's the moment when God shows up. That's the moment when Jacob is able to have his vision. But the reality of it is, how many of us allow the kind of space in our life when we can really be on our back with our feet up like Jacob? How many of us give ourselves the kind of grace to take the time to get out of the rat race, to get out of the game on the horizontal plane of life in order to reestablish the connection with the vertical? Well, maybe you all do, but I sure don't. I feel like my worth is caught up in all that I do. My worth can be caught up in my to-do list. But the story of Jacob, the story of him out in the wilderness receiving the dream from God, reminds me of a little lesson that a friend that I had at seminary told me. She said there's sacredness in couch time. The couch time can be our sacred time. So the time when life puts us on our back, the time when we feel like we can't do anything more, might just be the time that God comes in and speaks to us. Because in the couch time, you are no longer in the hustle and the bustle of what has been before, but you have not stepped in to the vision of what is to come. You are in a liminal space, as they say. And those liminal spaces, those couch times, if you're not taking it to just Netflix and chill and just zone out, but if you really allow yourself to open up and have messages come through, sometimes the messages can be very, very difficult. You start to see the kind of patterns that you were living before, and that can be very uncomfortable. You start to think about how ambiguous everything can seem and how uncertain the future really is. And yet, it is in those times that God and the message from heaven can really come through. Or at least it was that time for Jacob. And what does Jacob have when he's lying there on the cold ground, when he's lying there with the rock as his pillow? Jacob is given a dream. And a dream, how I interpret it, a dream is not just something that you have when you're sleeping. A dream is the moment that the connection between heaven and earth is reestablished. A dream is the moment when a person and their source of meaning become in communication again. A dream is the time when the creation connects with the Creator. Have you all ever had a dream that felt like it was giving you a vision for what you had to do next? Anybody? And when that happened, did you feel like you had the courage to act and do a new thing? It can be very hard when we feel like we are receiving guidance and feeling like there isn't proof for what it all might mean. It can be very difficult to go out and live your dream when the rules and the expectation of the society that formed you can't understand the dream that you've been given. But in Jacob, we find that no matter what our path has been, because I don't know if there's anyone in here who's literally tricked their blind father and stolen the birthright away from their brother, but in the person of Jacob, we find that no matter what has happened in your life, no matter how down and out and on sacred couch time you may be, the communication between heaven and earth, between us and our Creator, that channel is always open if we allow the space for it to happen. And the story of Jacob continues, where Jacob, who was fighting to establish himself after the dream, he's able to become the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. Through Jacob, this flawed vessel, God's blessing expands. It isn't just for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All of a sudden, it is now the 12 tribes of Israel. And through Jacob, we are reminded once again that no matter where you are, nothing can cut us from the communication that we have with our Creator. And this is good news today. Thanks be to God. Amen.